Hi, welcome to an episode of Delayed Offside, a post-Oilers debacle, a laid offside. As such, Adam's too scared to show up here. He knew that all those Winnipeg Jets fans that he insulted would just be waiting to, tell him off.
Pounce on him. He's going to go into hiding.
So he's gone into hiding. He's left for the weekend, and he's too scared to join us on the pod. I, another Oilers fan, will take the brunt of this, as I've already been reading Sanjay and Ryan's, and about 8 or 9 other people texting me, Sanjay's brother, my friends.
Poor Baron.
Just endlessly. Just sitting there
just
taking
piling
face slap after face slap. But I'm in such a poor conditional state, actually, that Sanjay's going to take the reins on this episode. So with that, I'm going to toss it over to our man Sanjay and let him run this episode.
I took a lot of heat this season from you guys, ragging on the Flames not making the playoffs and seeing McDavid, light up the Flames all year. So this comes back. It's
Thank God for that. Thank God I have that memory to sustain me through this dark night.
Let's watch the Sanjay video again.
Yeah, exactly. When's the Baron and Adam video gonna come out, right?
I have the Sanjay video saved, and even in my eye, I'll just close my eyes and view it. Calling for Sutter to return. It's fine, whatever. Anyways, okay, let's go. I'll take this. Come on.
All right, let's dig in. Let's start the podcast. All right, so welcome back. I originally had a whole section planned out for the beginning, but with everything that just transpired, we're recording this Sunday night. When you watch this, I don't know when we'll post this, but Edmonton may or may not be eliminated from the playoffs. But, let's just start with tonight. Baron, the resident Oilers fan, I'm going to start with you and take me through what happened today.
Today specifically?
Yeah. Let's just talk about today's game.
You don't want to go through the roller coaster of emotions for the last couple of days. Just focus today specifically. Okay.
All right. Well, let's start. From the beginning.
Let's go for today because I think today is fresher on the mind, and I can still summarize it up without crying. But essentially, game 3, which I would probably characterize as a must-win at this point for the Oilers in Winnipeg. The Oilers came out firing today. They set up their top line to be very, essentially their entire lineup to be very top heavy. They moved their third line center, Ryan McLeod, to the second line. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins played wing. Thanks, Tim. And
your cat feels your pain.
My cat is actually named after. My cat is actually named after the Nerd Room podcast host. No one knows this. No, he's not, but still. So anyways,
that cat, that one cat that when people are gonna die, it goes into the room because
it's here for my soul.
Yeah, he knows that.
That's so true. As opposed to Adam, who's just already gone, won't even show his face anymore. It's too bad he won't be joining us for the rest of the season because he's in hiding. But
he went up north into the woods, hiding out in a cabin. Those Jets fans can't find me here.
Their words can't hurt me here. But it's essentially, so they made themselves top heavy, and then they actually switched up their bottom 6. And I would argue that when you saw that bottom 6, it was not exactly inspiring, but change was probably needed in certain ways. Devin Shore coming back in produced a lot of turnovers, and that was something that would actually be beneficial to the team. And to be honest with you, the top line looked good and the fourth line looked really good, but the other two were kind of a little bit more invisible. Early on, the Oilers on the power play, penalties were finally called, and I do think that that's a both-way thing. I think Winnipeg's probably deserved a couple penalties. I think game 1 where Blake Wheeler got hit and the whole bench erupted, and the fact that the game played on, I think that's just poor game management on the refs coach, for the refs part. The team came out, they played hard, scored a ton of goals, went up heavy here, and they responded really quickly when Winnipeg scored a goal to kind of give themselves back that lead and keep that momentum. And then with about 8 minutes in, as I was preparing to move on in life, I had really felt that after the game 2 overtime loss, the Oilers had been outplaying the Jets in the first 2 games really strongly. And at that point, it was kind of like when they lost, it was like, it's going to be hard to come back from a 2-0 series. And then you see teams like Nashville did it today, and the Oilers gave me hope, which was the first mistake that I made, which was allowing them to give me hope. And all of a sudden, a monumental collapse in the third period. There's a lot of hate on this already for Archibald taking a penalty. which allowed a power play goal. But at that point, you still have a 2-goal lead. So I don't really think that that's the issue. That might be a turning point for momentum. It gave them an anchor, but I don't think that loss is on him. The second goal after that, really, you have to look at that fourth line and you have to look at that defensive pairing of Larson and Kulikov, because literally nobody was open. The winger was open, got 2 shots, his own rebound in. And then the next goal from Morrissey is one that Smith should have had. So really it was this entire culmination of disaster occurring at once. And I'll also point this out, no timeout called. What are you saving those for? Like, at what point are you saving a timeout? Like this, it's almost pointless at this stage. You let in 2 goals. There should have been a timeout called there. And like, let's refocus. Let's get a good line out. Let's kill this period out. Mm-hmm. And they didn't. They just kept letting it happen. And it has just been that. And now they're on the verge of being swept by tomorrow by the force of having to have a back-to-back game.
Yeah, no, that pretty much summarizes it. Pilon, do you have anything to add to that?
It was incredible. I was actually messaging Baron and Adam after Oilers went up 2-0, and I said, watch, like, the Jets, they're not going to be able to play this defensive style that they've decided to play in the series. They're going to have to open it up. And I said, watch out, like, that's going to play right into the Oilers' hands. And it did not turn out the way I thought it was going to turn out. And I mean, as a Leafs fan, Baron, I mean, I can sympathize and empathize, because, you know, we as fans have gone through something exactly like this, as you pointed out, into Game 7 instead of Game 3. But yeah, that's rough. Like, they were in control. They were dominating possession. They were, like, that first period, they were coming out. They were on fire. You could tell they were playing desperate hockey, and the Jets were still playing that, you know, defensive style, but the Oilers, they were pushing through it this time. Mm-hmm. Like, they were not going to be denied. And once they got up 2-0, I really thought that was it. And, you know, they were going to get that series to 2-1 going into tomorrow. But I also messaged in the message box there on Twitter that, you know, Ehlers coming back was a big get, a big positive for the Jets, and he turned out to be in this game. He's their best forward, and he provided them offense when they needed it.
It's interesting, like, a lot of this series is going to be looked back at as missed opportunities, and part of the fact is that the Oilers have not been very good of rising to an occasion, but even that, they usually play better sometimes against stronger competition. So the first game, you know, here's a team missing Dubois and Ehlers, and they couldn't take advantage. Second game, Dubois is back, and they can't take advantage. And I honestly thought Ehlers wasn't going to really count for much. I was like, here's a guy who's injured that they've just kept sitting him out longer and longer. Even today, I was honestly surprised that they played him, but I'm like, I guess if you have a chance to dagger someone, like to put a knife to their throat, you go for it. And man, did it work out. And now you're looking at a 3-0 series here. Like, so he's shot. I thought he was gonna be like Austin Matthews when he came back and just like have that, like, not have the energy, like playing with that little bit of injury still. No, he was he was launching it today. So
yeah, credit to Paul Maurice. You know, as a Flames fan, you know, I wasn't the biggest fan of his last year when he was calling out Tkachuk for what I considered incidental injury, but this year getting Ehlers back in the lineup when, you know, they're up 2-0, they could have just as easily saved him for next game, because they are playing back-to-back, and as well for keeping Hellebuck in net when it was 4-1. You know, you're playing back-to-back. They could have just as easily pulled him, put in the backup, and you know, rest him for tomorrow night, but they didn't. And he made some huge saves at the end of the third and in overtime to allow the Jets to come back and win. So Paul Maurice did a bang-up job coaching, and you know, the Jets, I think, took everyone by surprise. Like, I don't think very many people had the Jets winning this series. I know
none of us had the Jets even making the playoffs. I don't think. Maybe you did, Sanjay, but most of us didn't even have them.
I don't think I even did. Season. No, like I said they would win, but I don't know if I was like believing it. It was just more like a hope.
It was just jabbing or digging at Baron and Adam. Or just the fact that you cannot cheer for the Edmonton Oilers as a Calgary Flames fan, so you just
never
cannot even bet them to win it.
And see, I like an Oilers fan. I used to cheer for Calgary until Sanjay, and then Sanjay was such a jerk.
What did they do?
And I'm just like, and so I was just like, screw this, screw your team.
Yeah,
and that's it.
I remember Baron coming to Calgary and watching a Flames and Oilers game with me at the Saddle Dome, and it was like 7-1. Edmonton won. It was not a fun experience, and you were not very cordial that day, Baron. So
first off, it was a meaningless game as both teams were out of it. It was literally no.
Oh, we were still like, we could have made it.
Ryan Smith put up like 4 goals that game. I would like to show people a picture of early on in that game. I don't know if you can really zoom in to see it, but the white blur is me. The other white blur is
Sanjay.
It's Sanjay. But there's actually a better one of his brother just looking just sad as hell. I don't know.
I'm glad it's blurred out.
See if I can actually.
Baron, if you send me those pictures right after the podcast, I can actually put up on the screen maybe so people can see what it looks like.
Sure.
No, you don't have to do that. It's fine.
I don't even know if we can actually show Christian's face without consent.
We need a consent.
Sure we can. If it's on social media, it's fine.
Yeah. So one of the things, we're talking about the Oilers is, and I messaged you about this, is the Oilers have a tremendous power play. It was best in the league the last 2 years. And, being built for the playoffs, you don't get a lot of power plays, right? Like the refs put the whistles away, as you've seen in the last couple games. Even though they've calling a little bit more penalties, it's still not the same amount as the regular season. So, this goes back to last year when the Oilers lost as well to Chicago. And are the Oilers, do they have a problem in the playoffs? Is this enough to say, they're not built for the playoffs? Or do you think, what are your thoughts on that? Edmonton, very good special teams, very good power play penalty kill, but their 5-on-5 is really what's hurting them. Is there a problem in Edmonton with the playoffs? Are they not built for the playoffs, or is that premature to say? Maybe it's just 2 bad series, and maybe next year they'll figure it out and they're still working their way through it.
Off the bat, I don't think anything that occurred in the bubble can be related to the rest of it. Super unique circumstance. Goalies had been sitting for a long time. You look at the team that made it to the final last year. One of those teams literally lost 2 players and then brought them back miraculously at the end because of cap reasons. The other team didn't even make the playoffs, which is kind of becoming it used to occur more often, but I think it's become a very unregular that you go to the Stanley Cup final and the next year you're out of it. So I think last year is kind of just a regular misnomer, but that's problematic. I do think, though, that it probably points out some serious flaws in the roster, which is one, in the regular season, you can get away with a bunch of smaller guys and a strong power play. And as long as you play even between the whistles, you're fine. And power play can lift you up and go from there. I think the fact is, and you can look at the makeup of teams that have gone far in the last couple of years, fast, but also larger, stronger, hard-hitting guys. You look at how Montreal constructed their team. They literally constructed their team to try to be good for the playoffs. You look at even other teams like Colorado and Vegas, there's a heaviness to them that doesn't exist on the Oilers. Guys that are really small are playing in their top 6. And if today, they push those guys further down the line. And I thought that the speed gave them some options against the Jets and really forced play. But still, I think part of it is that it's not an experienced team. And I think that is coming to bite them a little bit. And I think that this team is honestly in a situation where, knowing next year that you have over 20 million in the cap, some of these guys aren't coming back. At the end of the day, whether you like them or not, I don't see how Ennis would resign here, given that he's been sat and he's small. Other guys like Shore, some of these guys are going to get jobs. Other guys aren't. And I think that is going to be part of the test moving forward. Can you make the changes so that this team can perform 5-on-5 throughout the regular season, but also at that point, or come the playoffs, be able to do both those things? And there hasn't been much penalties called. This series is starting to get some, but the first game had 1 penalty call. And that goes bad for both sides, because both sides rely on the power play. That's an advantage. And you can't tell me getting hauled down, Darnell Nurse hauling a guy down, or people getting outside of Archibald getting a stick to the face, that nothing else infraction occurred in that game. That's bullshit.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, I feel that. Pilon, so give Oiler fans a reason to tune in tomorrow. What are their chances for game 4?
Go ahead here, Ryan. Give it to me. Give me a reason to actually watch the game tomorrow, because I really do need one at this stage.
Well, first off, I would say overall, the Oilers have outplayed the Jets in this series.
Not helping me, Ryan. Really not helping.
They have. You know, you look at the shots and the scoring chances and the high danger chances. It's all in the Oilers' favor. Really, I mean, everyone's talking about how great Winnipeg's defense has been, and especially in the first two games, shutting down McDavid and Draisaitl. And like, I will give them credit, like, and not counting today's game because I don't have the stats, but I looked at the stats for the first two games. Their defense, they're first in hits per 60 in these playoffs, first in block shots per 60, and fourth in takeaways per 60. So, you know, they're playing a really gritty game. And what you can tell that they're doing, especially when McDavid's on the ice, is they're only sending one guy into the forecheck, and they're making sure everyone's back, and they're trying to limit the chances off the rush, which is Edmonton's, you know, specialty, off the rush. And they're just collapsing everyone and trying to, you know, make sure there's no rebounds and trusting Hellebuck to make the save. So I'll give them credit there. But, you know, for all this talk of their defense being spectacular, they have the worst high danger chances against per 60 at 5-on-5 in these playoffs. They're second worst in expected goals against per 60 at 5-on-5, and they have the fifth worst scoring chances against per 60. Their defense relies on Hellebuck. Hellebuck is stealing this series. Again, not looking at the stats for this game. This game was something else entirely, but especially those first two games, Edmonton controlled the play, but Hellebuck shut them down. He has a 986, again, not this game, 986 save percentage in the first two games with all those shots against him. So, you know, if I was to say hope for Edmonton, I mean, obviously being down 3-0, only 4 teams have ever come back from being down 3-0. It's looking very bleak, but you have been the better team. You have it. It's bleak, but you have been the better team throughout this series. All it'll take is to start getting some bounces your way, and to get Hellebuck rattled. And you got some goals passed in this game. Maybe he's not feeling as confident as he was the first two games. So now you just got to keep on that and don't give up the lead like you did this game.
Well, maybe Hellebuck has a bad sleep. You know, he has a kink in his neck when he wakes up tomorrow morning. You never know.
Well, the thing was, during the regular season, he played terribly against the Edmonton Oilers. Like Baron, like, I mean, when we were talking last pod about Hellebuck, or maybe it was the one before that, about Hellebuck's season, and I was saying that, like, oh, I think he had like a Vezina worthy season, like probably not a top 3, but maybe top 4 or 5 in the league. And you weren't really too hyped on him. Well, that's probably because he played like crap against Edmonton all year long.
This team went on an 8-game slide at the end of the season, like an absolute stinkfest 8-game slide. And it's hard to look at a team that has an 8-game losing streak and go, they have a Vezina goaltender. But the truth is in the playoffs, in a shortened season, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like you can, exactly. You can just, anything can happen. I mean, Washington was ahead of the Bruins, right, for playoff positioning. They're done today, right? And I don't think any of us really necessarily, like, some of us thought the Bruins were going to. I think I did too, but it doesn't mean that it's necessarily was a given. You know?
Definitely not.
But it does come back to it. Like, I think Hellebuck is something like an 8. What is this, like, goals above expected is like 8 saves or something. Like, he is making so much. He's doing so much to keep this team in it. And like you said, the team's defense is playing well. I actually think it's not even the defense. I think the whole team is essentially playing defense. Yeah. And they're doing a good job. Like, it's a complete buy-in, which is what you kind of need. And it sucks. But like, I honestly thought the Oilers, did I think this team was going far? No. Like, I didn't think this team was going to go all the way to the Stanley Cup final. I really didn't. I mean, they had a good year in certain aspects, but there's just too many uncertainties and too many question marks. Did I think this team was going to the second round? Absolutely. Like, yeah, I would have bet on it because they were just doing so well and they were clicking really well. And they lost 2 games in a row until now. And now they've lost 4, technically, if you go to the last game of the season.
Right. Well, and Sanjay was talking about their 5-on-5 play. And especially last year, that was the issue. It was 5-on-5, they were not a good team. They relied on their special teams. And as you said, in the playoffs, you just don't have as many special team opportunities. This year they were better at 5-on-5. Their offense was good at 5-on-5. They didn't just rely on their power play, and their defense, they weren't good. They were probably below average, I would say, defensively 5-on-5, but they weren't as bad as they were last year. They did improve. Like McDavid and Draisaitl really took it upon themselves to become better defensive players. So I really thought they did have the makeup to at least get by Winnipeg this first round.
Yeah, especially considering that game slide, Winnipeg was not looking like they were playing good hockey.
Well, and Winnipeg's defense during the regular season was terrible. And like I said, you look at those numbers of chances against and shots against, like really, it's still terrible. Like, I mean, like I said, they're doing great at blocking shots, at hitting, at takeaways. Like they're doing really gritty stuff. But just think about this. They have the most chances against per 60, and yet they still have the most block shots. Like, how often does Edmonton have the puck during the game for them to have both the most block shots plus the most high danger chances and scoring chances against? Like, Edmonton has the puck most of the time in these games, but Hellebuck is something else. And, it reminds me a lot about, and I hate to always bring it back to the Leafs, but the Leafs Columbus series last season, it was the exact same thing. Like Columbus would send one guy on the forecheck. That was it. Everyone else would be back, and they would really limit you to, gain one shot on net. Then they clear the puck and just basically play a game so that, you're really just limiting the opponent to as much as you can, and you're not really generating much, and you're just hoping that, you get one chance or one bounce that goes your way, and you're just really praying that you get that bounce, and you're not generating much. And it's really boring and frustrating hockey to play against, especially when you're the better team and you're peppering the goalie with shot after shot after shot, and nothing's going in, and you just can't believe it. You're like, eventually something's going to go our way, and then just one bounce goes the other team's way, and that's it. And it's frustrating hockey to play against.
There's been a couple times this season though too, like the Oilers have had several instances where Edmonton Oiler Josh Archibald will have a hearing for his clipping on Logan Stanley. I actually didn't think that play was as bad, but maybe I didn't really get a look at it. So that's kind of a news. But this team has been guilty this season of a couple of times where they've allowed the other team to score 2 or 3 goals in a row, like just bang, 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 quick like that. Like this collapse is not abnormal for the Oilers. It's just happening at the worst time, essentially. But throughout the season, if you go like Jason Greger had talked about this a lot on how you can't just give up 2 goals quick like that in any instance, and it's happened a lot. So, Low Tide, who's another Edmonton-based personality for TSN, he made the comment that he's like, no one can say this team's would have gone far, even if they win the series, because the truth is those 3 games would have turned out differently if they were. And I think, honestly, that's the tough part. Lots of Oilers fans are really locked in an idea that they didn't go. Like Andrew Berkshire, I think, was another guy who put out the comments like, oh, too bad they didn't go for it this season, which is kind of like an
like at the trade deadline, you mean, or what?
Yeah, but I mean, I just
they didn't have any cap though. Like that it was really tough on Hall.
Cap assets, and you have no proof that Taylor Hall wanted to come back to Edmonton. And that's the thing people are locked in on. But I honestly, your top 6 would be great, but your bottom 6 is really where it's struggling. And I think you got 20 million in cap space next year. You're going to have to make up some heavy ground here. Getting to the second round buys you a little more length. Not getting out of the first round really doesn't. So
and it's going to be interesting with Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. People are saying, he'll accept a $5.5 million deal for 5 years.
Frank Saravalli saying that. That was Frank Saravalli.
And I just don't see it. I mean, he's not getting first line minutes with McDavid, and so if he's on the second line making $5.5 million, I'm sure he could get first line contracts somewhere in the league making at least $7 million. So I always see what's that?
Okay, I was gonna say but if he takes $7 million or $8 million for Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, that team, if he's the top line center, is not making the playoffs.
No, probably not. But he's making that money in Edmonton. It's not like he's taking less money to play for Tampa Bay or play for Vegas, right? So I just don't see. I think there's a lot of question marks coming into the offseason for the Oilers. It'll be interesting. But if the Jets do win tomorrow or win one of the next 4 games, Is this the biggest series win in Jets history? They've struggled and suffered against the Oilers, much like the Flames through the 80s, and beating Edmonton, you just don't know what that means when you've been perennially beat by a team, for you to then finally beat them and get over that hump. 86 in Calgary is still talked about as like not up there with 89, but it's still like revered in like circles that we beat Edmonton. So is this the greatest?
I was going to say that Edmonton team was a powerhouse, though. That Edmonton team was a dynasty. I mean, I guess there's something that like, hey, we beat McDavid and Draisaitl, but this Edmonton team isn't at that elite level yet. They'll get there. I think this offseason, Holland will finally be able to do what he wants to do with this team. I think just the moves that Chiarelli made and the contracts he had signed really handcuffed him, and he had to just make a lot of fringe moves throughout. How long has he been with the team? 2 years now?
This is the second season.
Okay, it's the second season. Yeah. So
I think this cap constrained.
Yeah, so I think this will be the first offseason where he actually gets to like play a little bit and add some players that he really wants to do. I think they're going to get there at some point. But saying this is the Jets, biggest playoff victory if they win this series, just because they're beating McDavid, I don't see it. They went to the conference final a couple of years ago, and I think that's bigger for the Jets at this point.
Yes, Sanjay.
Fair enough. Well, we've talked about the Oilers for a long time. Started off this series. Let's go to our next favorite Canadian team that brings in the views. Let's
go all the Canadiens?
Yeah. Just for that, we're gonna do half the episode in English and the back half in French, just to gain that viewership in Quebec. No, I'm just kidding. I think I know like 4 French words, so it would not go over. Yeah. The Toronto Maple Leafs. So they started off a terrible, terrible start. Let's start there. John Tavares takes a hit, and then Corey Perry skating up behind him. Just a bang play. He tries to get out of the way. I don't think there was any malicious intent on Corey Perry. I know people were kind of questioning it just because it is Corey Perry. If it had been anybody else on the Habs that did that, I don't think there would have been any question whatsoever. But because it is Corey Perry, those questions do come up. Let's talk about the injury. Pilon, first off, do you think it was intentional? Did you think the fight with Foligno should have happened? And I guess before we throw to you, our thoughts are with John Tavares and his family, and hopefully he makes a full recovery because it did not look good. But Pilon, take us through your reaction to the hit and the injury.
All right. God, man, it was devastating. It was really hard to watch. It actually made me sick watching it. Like when the trainer, or when he was trying to get up and the trainers were trying to hold his neck and then he collapsed backwards, I just like gasped out loud. I was like, holy crap. And just the whole sequence after that too, it was really scary. Like all of a sudden all the players started shouting, and then they cut to like Dubas like banging on the table, and the trainers are putting their fist up to get the stretchers out, and like, man, that was scary. It was really, really scary, really disturbing. Do I think that Perry meant to do it? No, I do not. I think it was pretty clear in the replay. It was a very fast play. You could tell he tried to jump to avoid the hit. That's why I think he was trying to do. And it's just one of those weird things that happen in hockey. It's a fast game, and things happen quickly. And unfortunately, that happened. And I mean, you could tell from Perry's face that he was feeling horrible for what occurred. And he talked to Tavares while he was being stretchered out, I don't think he meant to do it. In terms of the fight, I didn't like it. I at that point, I actually I just felt, I don't know, I almost just didn't want to watch hockey at that point. Like it just felt like I said, sickening, and I felt bad for Perry. And then seeing Foligno all of a sudden challenge him to a fight, and like you could tell Perry really wasn't pretty much of a fight there. It was just like punishment. and it felt like punishment for something obviously he didn't deserve. And it was hard to watch. And actually my wife was even saying to me like, oh, like that's not nice. Like she was saying like, oh, I feel bad for him. Like Foligno actually made you feel sympathetic to Perry. Wow, never thought I'd see that happen.
Yeah, that's a tough thing to do.
That's very tough to do. But I did. I actually felt bad. Like I didn't want to see any more violence at that point. Like personally as a viewer, like I just had seen something horribly violent and traumatic, and I didn't want to see that. And it made me feel even like kind of like dirty and sick watching it, to be honest. But in terms of like, do I think it was wrong or not? Foligno didn't have the option to, or he probably had the option, but he didn't see the replay in slow motion. Perry does have a reputation. And, personally as a fan, for years, we have not had these kind of players to stand up for our teammates. And that's been the biggest criticism against the Leafs is they're soft and they get pushed around. So, I mean, I would personally rather have a player on my team who's going to fight someone who maybe didn't deserve it, as opposed to a player who wouldn't fight someone who did. So, I didn't like it, but I'm not going to crucify him over it. Like Perry and no one else on the Habs really seemed that upset over it. So, why should we?
Yeah, fair enough. Baron, what are your thoughts on the injury and the subsequent fight that happened after?
The John Tavares injury is probably like one of the worst things I've ever watched during a hockey game. And the hit happened so quick, and the way the camera's moving, you really weren't sure what had occurred. And it was actually the replay that showed you. And then it was like you said, the video of John trying to stand up, and you're just like, oh, like that is not good. Mm-hmm. And you realized in that moment how bad that actually was. That and I think Richard Zednik getting like the skate to the neck are the two worst things I've ever seen.
Yeah, that one was bad too.
They both just, and what they do is both these events just snapped you out of the hockey game, right? Mm-hmm. They hit, you see it, and you're aware that you're seeing something terrible occur, and you're not invested in the hockey game anymore. Like Ryan said, like it was really hard to re-engage in watching that hockey game after that. And then this fight occurs. And after you've digested the replay for the fact that like Sportsnet played it 30 times in a row, like let's keep watching this hit occur on this guy, which I think would have been terrible for his family honestly, because they're not there in the game. And all they have is this constant replay of their husband, their son, their brother, whatever, just getting hit in this accident, in this freakish accident over and over. I think that would have been very tough. They just sucked the life out of everything. And then this fight occurs and you're like, why? And I know Foligno's a big part of his conversation was, let's just have this fight and then we'll move on. But I don't think that was true, because I think later on guys were still going after him about it. Like Simmons was trying to argue with him later on and thing. And even if Corey Perry has a reputation, there's zero chance that that you're ever intending to injure a guy like that. Like where you potentially are breaking his neck or something, So yeah. I thought it was hard to watch. I'm not surprised that Toronto lost that game. I would have been more surprised had they won it coming back from that, because like you saw Austin Matthews' face. Like that'd just be like watching someone you really care about get injured. It would just take you right out of it.
You could tell their heads were not in the game in that first period after that hit. They were not themselves at all. No.
And I think both teams had struggled, like even if you're Montreal, just thinking about that, and like you can see Carey Price was like upset and he was going around. So it was tough for everyone involved. Definitely affected the Leafs play. They didn't win game 1. Montreal ended up winning that, but game 2, they came back strong and they won 5-1. Pilon, you're the resident Leafs expert. Was it more of a case of, okay, they had that traumatic thing that happened with John Tavares. It's just they couldn't, bounce back. And then once they found out, okay, he's okay, we can play our game, we can go forward. Do you think it was as simple as that, or what was the difference between game 1 and 2?
I think there were a few things. So yeah, that first period in game one was basically a wash. Like I thought both games, I thought either the Leafs came out slow or the Canadiens came out firing. One of the two or a combination of both. And then in game one, that hit occurred fairly early and that whole first period was a wash for the Leafs. I felt they played a lot better after that. But they just, Price made a few really good saves. They hit the post a few times. They just couldn't bury one. And I will give Montreal credit. They were really coming out gritty and hard hitting. Like I think they doubled the Leafs in hits at least. They had a couple really good takeaways on the back check when it looked like Marner was going in for a shot on a 2-on-1, and it happened one other time. I can't remember to who. They were playing really, really good, hard hitting defensive playoff hockey. And the Leafs just didn't seem to be willing to respond in kind in that game. This game, this last game here, they did. They matched the intensity that the Habs brought. Again, I didn't think that they came out that strong, but once they got going, they took over and they basically dominated the game once they got going there. And, the Habs kind of fell apart. Like they were, again, trying to assert their physical play over the Leafs, but it was costing them penalties because they were going over the line with their cross-checking. And finally, the Leafs power play came to life. Rasmus Sandin, who I said might be the unsung hero for the Leafs coming in, him being on that power play has changed it dramatically because Morgan Rielly was never a scoring threat at the top of that power play on the point. He just doesn't have a great shot. And Rasmus Sandin does, as we found out. He got his first ever playoff goal on a one-time blast from the point that went in. And it just never stopped from there. Matthews had 3 points. Marner had 2 or 3 points. They were clicking. They were firing. They were all over Montreal. And that's what I was expecting to see from the Leafs. So I think they've rallied now around John Tavares. I've heard like he reached out to all the teammates via text telling them that he was okay. And they wanted to win it for John, and they came out and did so. So I'm hoping we continue to see those Leafs going forward.
Speaking of going forward, Baron, give us your prediction. What's going to happen in Game 3? Is it Montreal going to turn the tide, or is Toronto going to keep this momentum and take Game 3?
Honestly, I would have a hard time to vote against Toronto winning or losing that game. Like, so they're going to win it for sure. I would bet on that, but my bets have been pretty terrible lately. So
put all your money in Montreal.
Price hasn't been like Hellebuck where he's like outstanding. He's just been good. But last game he wasn't. So realistically, if they get him moving and they're there, it really won't matter. So yeah, I just have a hard time thinking it. I think what you're bigger going to look at is as you look at the teams that are starting to advance, Colorado, the Boston Bruins, a lot of the betting seems to be on the fact that the Leafs have an easier avenue going forward in the playoffs, but you're still going to hit these other teams at some point. And I'll be honest, I look at teams like Colorado, I look at teams like Tampa Bay, and I don't see that without like John Tavares, that is a huge loss.
Losing Tavares is huge.
Like that is like we're focused on him being hurt so much that it's like this team, even they're going to do good. They're going to have good momentum. They're probably the favorite moving into the second round, whoever they play against, for sure as well. But I mean, honestly, man, that is a big loss, and there is no way he's back this playoffs. Like they just
you don't think so?
Oh, man,
he's out for sure.
Not for his sake.
Well, he's out for sure for 2 weeks because he also suffered a knee injury from the hit. Who was it that hit him? The defenseman from Montreal.
You cannot tell me that he doesn't have
he's huge.
More than a light level concussion. He has a light level concussion.
Well, look at Edmonton with Jujikara. He got knocked out against Ritchie in Calgary, and it looked really bad. That was another really terrible injury. Watching it, I can't even watch that fight anymore. It was just awful. And he's playing in the playoffs, and he got injured again, and he's playing.
He never tested positive for a concussion in both instances.
How? Who's doing the test? How does he he looked like he was completely dazed and out. Like, there's no way you can tell me he had no concussion.
But once again, we talked about this last time. A boxer can take a punch and go woozy and not be concussed. John Tavares kept trying to stand up, except for the fact that Jason Spezza kept telling him not to, and he could recognize Spezza's voice. So keep in mind what that means. That means I can't see you. Mm-hmm. I can hear you.
Oh, right? Yeah. He definitely has a big time concussion. Concussions are a weird thing, though, right? In that, you never know how long it's going to keep someone out for. We can see it. Like, I mean, I agree, Baron. I see the results from that hit, and I think, oh my God, he's not going to be back at all these playoffs. But you don't know, because everyone's brain works differently and reacts differently to concussions. So, I don't. He won't be back this series for sure. He's out for sure 2 weeks. I think he'll be out at least the next round as well. I'm hoping that he be back for the conference final, the semifinal. I guess there's not really a conference, so the semifinal. I would hope he be back, but I mean, I'm not holding my breath. Dom, how do you say his last name from The Athletic? I'm not sure.
Anyways, I know who you're talking about. Dom at The Athletic is literally
very smart guy with all these like advanced analytical graphs and formulas. Anyways, he had this whole thing where the Leafs percentage of beating Montreal going into these playoffs was like 80, and the numbers aren't quite right. It was 83, let's say, percent, and it dropped to 67 after they lost Tavares. He said he was like worth like 3 wins a game or something like that. So I mean, he's a huge loss for the Leafs. He's I would say their third best forward after Matthews and Marner, probably their second best goal scorer after Matthews. It's going to be very difficult to win without him. We'll see how they do. I mean, their depth is going to be tested here. I mean, some teams have won with losing big stars like this. Like Tampa won the cup without Stamkos, right? Pittsburgh won the cup.
He still played. He scored a goal.
Not even a full game.
He played and scored a goal. But you can't tell me like that team has less.
No, they're more deep. They're deeper.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying. I'm giving examples. I'm trying to like cheer myself up here.
No, we're all miserable here. I'm miserable. We're all miserable.
Pittsburgh won without Letang that 1 year. So I mean, it could happen. Is it likely? I mean, their chances are a lot less. And I already thought their chances were pretty slim beating a team like Colorado. They're just good at every area, but you never know. I hope, but I mean, honestly, the Leafs are like cursed. I swear to God, they're cursed. This is 4 years in a row they've lost a big time player in the playoffs in the first round. 2 years in a row, Kadri got suspended. Then last year, Muzzin got stretchered off in the first game. And now Tavares. Like, we just can't seem to get out of the first round healthy. Well, get out of the first round at all, let alone healthy. So
I mean, well, you bring up a point about players or teams having won the cup with big injuries. I think back to Colorado in 2001. Peter Forsberg was out the last 2 rounds, and the Avalanche, now that was one of the greatest teams ever assembled, won the Stanley Cup without Peter Forsberg, their second best forward. So it can happen, but sticking with Colorado, and you mentioned Kadri, suspended twice with the Leafs, and he does it a third time. This guy does not learn. So we also the hit, pretty brutal headshot, no attempt to go anywhere but the head. Baron, we've been
full charge to it too.
Full charge. We've been critical of the Department of Player Safety and George Peros, and this time, he didn't just do a light tap on the wrist. He gave a full 8-game suspension in the playoffs. Baron, what are your thoughts first off on the hit? And do you think 8 games is too little, too much, or just right?
Here's the thing I have. Here's a question I have for you. So he has appealed this today, right? Mm-hmm. He put in an appeal. So does he get to play the next game?
No.
Well, how does an appeal work? Because Vegas is still playing, right? So they're in the second round. So
right, but how does an appeal work? Does an appeal allow you to keep playing like it does in the NFL?
So the way that he now gets to make his case to Bettman, and then if he isn't happy with what Bettman decides, then they can take it to an arbitrator. And it was on Sportsnet. They were saying that because it's in the playoffs, I guess they'll speed up the process.
Well, there's a factoring to playoff games. Like a playoff game's worth like 3 or 2 regular season games usually. So 8's a lot in a playoff form. The thing is, and this is the thing I think that has to be kind of thought of now, Kadri's only been off the Leafs for 1 year. So he's only missed 1 year where he hasn't taken a full suspension.
No, 2.
This is the second year.
Yeah, this is the second, but there's only, that's, I mean, there's 1 year between his last suspension and this.
Oh,
suspension.
yeah, gotcha.
So I think he still kind of constitutes a repeat offender in that case, especially when it comes to playoff hitting.
Actually,
like he doesn't officially. No, I know.
Right.
He doesn't officially, but I think like you can't tell me that didn't weigh in on this decision.
Oh, it did, and they said
100%.
it in their statement that
So,
his
exactly.
past history resulted in
And
a
that's
harsher
what
fine.
I mean by repeat.
Harsher.
Like he's not an official repeat offender, but the fact that he's done that, I think that's a big part of it.
And I guess the repeat offender is actually only relates to the monetary amount that they could lose, not actually like the amount of games that they could be suspended, which I did not realize at all. There's so much about the Department of Player Safety. I have no idea. I don't know what they do up there, what they do.
You do have to think though at some point here that like this is going to be the end of his career if he keeps doing this, because you're never going to pick up a guy who's going to be off your team after the first round and leave you with a giant hole because they can't control themselves from hitting guys stupidly. Because I like Kadri's a gamer. I think he's a huge part of Colorado. They lucked out that they had a weaker opponent in the first round and don't have to really worry about it. Sorry, Blue fans. You're just not in the year. So honestly, like if he gets his appeal to 6, or 5, I would be not surprised, but I bet you this one holds. But I really do think like it's gonna potentially become the thing that he categorized. A guy like Matt Cook, where he's just kind of gonna do something shitty when he's on the ice, and people will eventually just stop grabbing you. They don't want you.
Yeah, Rafi Torres was the same kind
Rafi Torres, predatory hitter.
Yeah. What about you, Pilon? You saw it firsthand. You could say it cost the Leafs.
You used to cheer for it, Ryan. What?
I did. I love Kadri, man. And
make you happy
I was
when he hurt those Bruins.
I was pissed when Dubas traded him away because I said there's no way he's going to do it a third time. Like, why trade him? It's never going to happen again. Well, I was wrong.
You bet on the Oilers. You bet on him not hurting people. Yeah. Just all your bets are going sideways here, buddy.
Yeah, never listen to anything I say because the opposite's going to happen. I guess Dubas won that trade.
You win that trade. What did you get? You got
Barry's not even on the team anymore.
Kerfoot and Barry.
Kerfoot and Barry.
Yeah, so I'm not the biggest Kerfoot fan, but at least he's still playing. So we win. I don't know. Like the first 2 suspensions with Kadri were more with him losing his cool, right? Like the Boston Bruins, they were just getting away with so much stuff, and no whistles were being called, and they were hacking and whacking and just doing everything illegal they could, and they kept getting away with it. And eventually he snapped, like both times. Basically, he snapped. This wasn't the same. It was just a dirty hit. Like I don't think he was upset about anything. They were winning at that time in the game quite handedly, I believe. He just did a very dangerous hit, and he needs to be in more control of himself in these games because he's not helping anyone. He's not helping his team being out of the lineup.
I also think like his suspension didn't hurt the Avs against the Blues. But if they have to play Vegas, his absence in the lineup is going to be much more noticeable. And that is something that I think will stick with how people view him on this. He's going to cost them something. Or he might cost them something, I should say.
I think he's lost 2 games against the Blues, so he's got 6 more to go against Vegas. So he would be eligible only for a Game 7 if that series goes that far. So he's going to be a huge hole on Colorado.
There was a thing where people are like, they should not lose this game, but they should absolutely lose this game. Like they should have tossed up 2 free games to the Blues to just limit how much those games would cost.
That's so dangerous in the playoffs.
Oh, you can't. Look what 2 games does.
Can't.
Look what 2 games does to a team.
You can't, but yeah. No, I mean, talking about other series and Colorado, they moved on. Boston moved on, and tomorrow I think who else has a chance to close it out?
The Jets have a chance to close it out tomorrow.
But Vegas has a chance to close it out. Are Boston and Colorado, are they Stanley Cup favorites at this point? They're the first 2 teams to move on? Or do you think they just got a weak opponent and they'll have a tougher test in the second round?
I think they're Stanley Cup favorites. I mean, Colorado won the President's Trophy, and in our predictions podcast, I basically said they're like as perfect a team as you can get. Like they have no flaws on this team. Losing Kadri hurts. We'll see how long he's actually out for. Maybe that'll cost him up going up against Vegas, because Vegas is a very good team as well. But they're a very, very good team. And then Boston, they really picked it up after they got Taylor Hall. Like they were struggling offensively. They only really had one scoring line. That second line wasn't really doing much. David Krejci's getting older, and he didn't really have much help on that second line. Taylor Hall, as soon as they brought him in, the offense just exploded for the Bruins, and they've always been a pretty good defensive team and puck possession team. So I could see them going very far as well.
What about Lightning? Like, here's a team that's picked up $90 million.
Yeah.
Now there was some injuries last game.
Yes. Though. What happened with has anyone heard?
Yeah, I don't know if Kucherov's out or if he is just out for that hit on the back of the leg. That hit on the back of the leg from the slash didn't look that bad, but I think it just caught you in a soft spot. Right?
It was dirty though.
Oh yeah,
very dirty.
That's the best part about that series is how much they hate each other.
Yeah.
Actually, I would also argue that, just to throw this back, I think part of the issue between the Jets and the Oilers is it's not a hateful series.
Not yet.
It's even after is it going to feel hateful? I don't know. I think something more has to happen for that to occur.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a good point about the Panthers and the Lightning. Those two teams hate each other. We've already seen Sam Bennett suspended. But, Panthers are down 3-1, but they haven't played that bad. I think it's just inexperience and goaltending. And it's unfortunate that they have Bobrovsky signed for $10 million for another 5 years, because this is a young, exciting team with a lot of top-end talent on forward and D. And I think signing Bobrovsky for that long may hinder their cup window. Honestly, it's 10
losing
million.
Aaron Ekblad was a big loss for them too.
Oh, 100%.
Season though, like once Ekblad was gone, it was.
Uyghur stepped up and they brought him Brandon Montour. He's done well, but I mean, you can't tell me having Aaron Ekblad in their lineup wouldn't help them out.
Oh no,
it wouldn't help them at all.
No, I agree with you.
Oh, for sure, but they're putting in Spencer Knight, who's kind of the young hot goalie, so hopefully he can turn the tide in that series, because go Panthers, can't cheer for the Lightning, so hopefully we can see that series extended a little bit longer.
I was thinking, why can't you cheer for the Lightning? Oh, okay, yeah, right. Calgary. Gotcha.
Yeah, still got some wounds. Do
you hate Montreal for when they beat the Flames?
No, because we beat them in '89, so it evened out.
So if you beat the Lightning in the Stanley Cup final, then you'd be
you like them again.
Well, like if like 3 years in like 2007, if they beat the Lightning, then I'd be like, okay, whatever. But now that like Iggy never gets a cup, I just can't. Keeper never gets a cup. Yeah,
he chased a cup, but chasing a cup's a tough gamble. Not everyone gets.
He moved to Colorado too early. He should have just sat out for a couple of years and then joined Colorado this year, and he would have been okay on that fourth line. He moved too early. So one thing, we're talking about playoffs a lot, but that's not the only hockey thing happening. While you guys were watching exciting NHL playoff hockey, I was combing through draft analysis and scouting combine reports. So,
Sanjay, it's too early.
No, we're doing a draft thing here. What are your thoughts on who's going to go first overall, and what have you heard about this draft?
I've heard almost nothing because I haven't paid attention to the top 10 picks. I know that one of them, the guy who's number 2, is like a defenseman, and he's supposed to be really good.
It's a really weird draft. I've seen, normally when there's a draft, who's going first overall, or who's going second overall, right? There's like a hierarchy. Okay, these are the top players, and every mock draft has them going first or second.
Right.
This year, it's not like that. I've seen players that have been, this guy from the Edmonton Oilers Kings, Dylan Guenther, I've seen him going anywhere from 5th to 15th. Like, I've seen him being available, and the Flames take him at 13th, and I've seen him going like 5th overall to Detroit. So
I would be shocked if he goes that far down the draft. I really would.
Yeah.
I
agree too.
He is prolific. Like, he really is.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he's a player that, before the WHL came back, he was in that teen range. But the fact that he was able to put up 12 goals, 12 assists, 24 points in 12 games, he's rocketed up there. There's a couple good players that are supposed to be drafted, so we'll keep an eye on that. Keep you posted for all you non-playoff teams. And I believe the draft lottery is June 2nd, but don't quote me on that. So I'll be tuning in for bated breath. Hopefully Calgary can get some of that Edmonton magic and win once the draft lottery.
Taylor Hall, that's on you.
Yeah.
Sanjay, since you've been actually keeping up on like the draft, the draftees, the prospects, who are you hoping Calgary can get? Who looks good that would fit with what Calgary needs?
Yeah, what Calgary needs. Oh boy, how long do we have? Dylan Guenther, he was one guy that I was looking, but unfortunately, he's played his way out of Calgary's range. One guy
depending on the lottery.
Depending how people view them. There's two players that Calgary has that I'm kind of curious that might be available when they pick 13th because they won meaningless games and dropped down. Thanks a lot. Is Mason McTavish. He's a player that played in the U18s and he did really well. Goal scorer, good forward that I think, he could be a second line player for the Flames or third line player next year. I think he could make the jump. And I think he played for Peterborough and I'm not sure where he played this year because there was no OHL. So I'd have to look that up. And, a couple others is Chaz Lucius. Like, what a name, Chaz. Having him on the Flames just would be awesome for the name alone. He was a player that was supposed to go really high, but he had a knee injury and missed most of the year. But when he came back, he was tremendous for the U.S. Development team. I think he put up about 2 points a game. So he's another forward that I would love to see Calgary, if he's available, if Mason McTavish is out, take a chance on him. And then the last player is a Finnish player, Atu Ratti, who at the beginning of the year, everyone was like, this kid's going to go number 1 overall. He did really good against men in the Finnish league. But then when COVID play came back, he struggled in the juniors. And scouts kind of knocked him for that. I'm thinking it was just like a weird time and, a lot was going on. So I don't know how much stock you can put into his bad play in the juniors, but he's a player that if he can rebound, you can get him a steal at 13. So a lot of
looking for
interesting
centermen.
I'm looking for forwards. Yeah. Centers, wingers, whatever you got. Going into next year, Calgary, clearly you don't sign Daryl Sutter to tank. And as much as I'd love to get Shane Wright on the Flames, I don't think the Flames are going to go that route. So you might as well get a player that you think can help the team next year. So, a forward I think is where they need the most help. So that'd be kind of cool if they can get one of those players. So fingers crossed, we'll see coming into this draft. And I'm sure we'll talk more about the draft prospects in the summer when we have our draft preview mock draft show.
I will do as much to avoid being on this podcast in the summer as humanly possible.
We're doing weekly podcasts during the summer, Baron. We got free agency, we got drafts, we got.
I'm going to be stuck in like Wainwright, Alberta, working, and you guys are going to be like, ready to record, and I'll be like, no, I'm covered in wood ticks, and I fell in a slough. Leave me alone.
Perfect.
The fact that I'm literally like a day away of thinking about drafts, it makes me like sick to my stomach. So
welcome to the team.
That's been like my last 12 years.
Don't lose faith. It hasn't been that long since the team came back down 3-0.
LA did it.
The
Flyers or Boston did it. I can't remember.
Flyers did in 2010. LA did in 2014. That's not that long ago.
Once again, had we won the overtime game, the second game, and it was a 1-1 series, today's loss wouldn't mean as much. Had we won today, I would have a little more faith, but I would still be reserved. Having lost today, I kind of lost faith and I lost reserve. Even if they win the game, I am probably not going to try to get my hopes up until they're at least win 2.
Honestly, after they went up 2-0, I was ready to come on this podcast and be like, Oilers, I hope you enjoyed it, Winnipeg fans. Oilers are winning this one. I honestly thought Oilers were just going to dominate that game. I thought it was going to be like a 5-1 game or something like that. And I just figured, there's the floodgates, and Oilers found a way, and it's over because they've been, like I said, dominating possession, dominating chances. It's just been Hellebuck stopping them.
Give credit to the Jets forwards and players to get 4 goals or 3 goals in the final 9 minutes is not easy.
They turned on the offense. They stopped sending just one guy. And the thing is, the Jets are good offensively, which is like, it's weird. It's been weird watching them commit to this team defense thing because You know,
but you have to.
They
The
have
D is
to.
so terrible. Like you have no choice.
Exactly. That they had to, and it's smart what they're doing. It's very smart hockey, but you know, when you see them play offensively like that, you're like, oh right, yeah, that's right. They do have some decent forwards that can score goals.
They were so bad heading into the playoffs that we forgot. Like we forgot that they had that good of a team. Here's a question: what's your Adam's optimistic take? What do you think he's thinking his optimism response would be? Because, you know, he's always saying like, well, you know, blah, blah, blah. He literally sent 2 videos trolling the Jets fans and is now kind of eating some crow. But I do wonder, what do you think his optimistic take would be?
Oh, he's going to say Jets in 7 for sure. I haven't seen his video.
Jets in 7?
You think he'll say Jets in 7?
No, he's going to say Oilers in 7. Absolutely.
Oh, for sure.
Until they're dead and done with, he's going to believe in them all the time. He's Mr. Positivity. He's always positive.
And then if they do win, he'll tell us how amazing he is at predictions.
I say his positivity take will be like, well, you know, the Lightning got swept and then they won the Stanley Cup the next year. So if the Oilers get swept this year,
that'll be the next video after they're eliminated. Then he'll say that. Like he'll always find a positive spin, right? He really should have been a politician. Right? Absolutely. I don't know why he's a teacher. He should have been a politician. That's what he should have been.
Missed opportunity. Well, we've seen teachers turn into politicians in this country, and it always works out. So, going into our last segment of the episode. You know, I thought I was going to start with this, but
you did decide to use this. Okay.
Yeah, I was going to start with this, but you know, I really wanted to get Baron's hot take for the.
Well, it was fresh.
Yeah, it was fresh. You know, it was stewing in his mind the whole day. So
yeah,
I really wanted him to talk about the Oilers. But let's before we begin talking about some positives, you know, let's share some of our woe that we've experienced as fans. And I didn't put this in the notes, but I just wanted to bring it up because, you know, before we get into the positives, let's all have our tale of woe. Let's talk about what is the worst loss as a fan you've ever had watching hockey, just to get it off our chest, be a little bit therapeutic. Today's a day of healing. I'll start while you guys think of yours. I'll go back to 2004, no brainer. Game 6 against the Lightning, Stanley Cup Finals. The cup is in the building for the first time. Calgary could win the Stanley Cup on Saddledome ice. Tied going into the third period, late in the third. Martin Jelena scores. Only the NHL doesn't have the technology or doesn't invest in the technology, even though earlier that year in the World Hockey Championships, a similar goal was scored and they were able to call a goal for Canada. But I guess in the NHL, our technology sucks or their technology sucks. Anyways, no goal. First overtime, no winner. Second overtime, very briefly, Martin St. Louis walks in, scores, and Flames can't rebound. They lose game 7-1. But that is probably, you know, I think that'll never be topped. That is the greatest loss as a Flames fan that I've ever witnessed, and I don't know what can top it. It was Stanley Cups in the, you know, if they had won that game, my whole outlook on the Flames would be different. You know, they lose in the first round, who cares? We had 0-4. You know, they lose a player, who cares? We won in 0-4. But since then, I've been trying to chase that, and so that's my tale of woe, my tale of regret. The white whale, the one that got away. What are your guys' most heartbreaking losses as a fan?
Ooh, okay. Well, I can go for 2 of these. I really vividly remember the game against Carolina in 2006, where essentially just the way that team, the Oilers, came out in that game, I kind of felt right off the bat that we were screwed. And then in the third, they really poured it on, and it was like they finally clicked in and Pisani scored, and you're like, oh, amazing, blah, blah, blah. But just it's a little naive at the time, but just like that, the feeling that it sucks, but we're still going to be good next year. And at that time, Pronger was still on the team. There's a lot of good pieces, Rollis and so forth. And then everybody left. And so it didn't hit me at the time, but later I was like, man, I look back at that. I'm like, wow, that was a super sucky moment because they just couldn't seize it. And this is a little bit of a weird one, but I'm going to actually say the last game against Chicago in the play-in round, because the Oilers would have been a playoff lock. had COVID not occurred. They were second. They were chasing Vegas for first in the West. And all this is happening. And the reason why it bugs me so much, like I was actually like, I literally took my stuff, threw it downstairs. I didn't even look at it. I was so disgusted. And I was disgusted partially because like a guy I work with was sending me messages throughout the entire series. Him and I don't talk. We're not really friends. He clearly doesn't give a crap about hockey other than the fact that he bandwagon jumped on the Blackhawks. And it was just like, and he was going to talk to me about hockey. And I was just like, I really don't care. Like, just stop talking to me. So that really drove it in. But that feeling of disgust is pretty strong in my memory. And I hadn't felt that way until probably tonight.
I also have two. They're probably fairly obvious. 2013, the epic collapse in Game 7 against Boston, down by 3. I actually only watched the third period. I've already told this story, but I was working for CBC at the time, and I was covering a municipal election during game time, and I kept getting texts from a buddy of mine. Yeah, and I kept getting texts from a buddy of mine saying like, "Oh, the Leafs are up by 2. Now they're up by 3," and I'm like, "Holy crap! They're actually going to win." They were huge underdogs going into that series, and literally the second I got back to the office, I was like, hey, I have time to file my story. I'm going to watch the rest of this game first. And I put on the game, and like literally that's when the comeback started. And so it was horrible because not only did they have that epic collapse, but it felt like because I actually turned on the game, they lost because you always put it on yourself. So that one sucked. That one was really disappointing. And then I'll go to last year. Losing to David Ayers was just embarrassing. And it's going to live on forever. They're making a Disney movie out of it. And, his stick is in the Hall of Fame. And of course that happens against the Leafs. Like, it's the most embarrassing thing that could happen, losing to a Zamboni driver who's like 42 years old, who actually worked for your organization, and you lose to him. It was just so embarrassing. So those are the two hardest ones for me.
Yeah, we've definitely had our tale of heartbreak being a fan of any Canadian team since 1993. I think, Canucks fans, Canadiens fans, Jets, Senators fans could all share in our misery. So, hit us out in the comments. What is your greatest tale of woe? But let's start with something positive, or let's go to something positive right now. Because we are in the first round. Give us a couple of your favorite, it could be one, could be two, first round memories you have watching your team. I'll start us off. For me, I'll touch on a couple moments in the next question, but I'll take you back to a series against the Sharks. Flames are down 0-3. The Sharks get 3 goals in the first 3.5 minutes. I'm at the game. The Flames pull Kiprusoff, put in Curtis Joseph. And at that point, you're like, it's over. It's 3-0. The Flames aren't coming back. Little couple minutes later, Patrick Marleau has the puck, and he looks to center it, and then he looks down for a split second. Corey Sarge sees this. He goes up the ice. He levels a very clean hit, nails Patrick Marleau. The whole Saddle Dome erupts. This game's at the Dome, and as a skirmish ensues, the Flames, get the momentum from that. They get 1 goal. They get 2 goals. Dion Phaneuf scores late in the beginning of the third period. It's tied 3-3. And then late in the third, Owen Nolan steps out from the corner, takes a slap shot, goes in, and the place goes wild. The Flames win 4-3. What an epic first round win matchup that was. And fortunately, they didn't win the series, which is typical of the Flames. I think I counted since I started watching hockey in '94. The Flames have made the first round 14 times and have won twice. So I'm used to them losing in the first round. And my other first round memory is the Flames are down 2-0 to the Blackhawks. And they call up a 18-year-old kid named Jerome McGinley to come play for them in '96. And he plays on a line with Theo Fleury. And McGinley tells a story how he was shaking everyone's hand, saying thank you, or hi, welcome, I'm on the team. Fleury cuts him off in the dressing room and goes what the hell are you doing, kid? We got to get out there. Throws him his jersey. He gets on the ice, and he gets an assist his first game and a goal in his second game. And the rest, they say, is history. So pretty cool to see a Flames prospect like that make his debut in the playoffs. So Baron, what is some of your favorite first round memories that you remember?
First round memories are I'm probably gonna go back to the 96-97 season where the Oilers had a string of constantly having to play Dallas, and Dallas always coming out strong. And that year, it's like the famous Todd Marchand overtime goal, where with Curtis Joseph in net, like the Oilers beat Dallas, and that's just such a strong memory for how this team was. The other first round is actually beating Detroit in 06. And I hate talking about 06 all the time because it's so far now and it's just whatever. But that game, like no one picked the Oilers to be the team. Like they basically got into the playoffs with 2 games left and rested guys those last 2 games. And then, here they are, they come out and bang, like they end up beating Detroit. Like I remember Manny Legacy, it was like, that's basically it for his career. There was all this conversation about, is Datsuk even going to be a good hockey player because he can't perform in the playoffs? Like I remember those stories very vividly. And like you're listening to it, you're like, man, oh man. So those are big ones. Beating Detroit was huge because that was David versus Goliath at that time. And that'll always stand strong for me, more than the other series did.
Oh, yeah, I remember that too. I thought there's no way Edmonton has any chance. And that was Steve Yzerman's last game in the NHL. I think it was game 6. They lost in, I think, Rogers Arena. Or not Rogers, but Rexall, right? That was like the might be the last series win in Rexall.
And that was the first year.
Maybe not.
That was the first year I ever met Adam, and I just thought, oh my God, this guy believes in his team so much. What the hell?
Yeah, so we did a hockey,
and it hasn't changed since.
We did a hockey draft, and you had to pick players, and so he picked a team, and then it's his own hockey draft, and then he bought himself another team, put in like $20, and did all Oilers.
Yeah,
and I think that's why when he says he's a good predictor, he tells you, he's like, well, I picked all Oilers. He doesn't tell you that he actually put 2 teams in to double his bet. But I would love to see who was on that original team that he picked or how he did in that other team, but I don't remember.
Yeah. So that's pretty epic. I wonder if he still has it. He should tell us.
No, it's all online, man. It's all online.
Pilon, what about you? What are some
first round? So I'm going to go back to 2004 because it was really around the time that I really became a strong hockey fan. And it's the last time the Leafs won in first round. And it was the Battle of Ontario against the Sens. And I already told this story, but I had a buddy in high school, and he was a big Sens fan. We were just going back and forth the whole time. So just the fact that they won that series and I was able to get the last word was really nice. And the goal that always sticks out in my mind, or I think there was actually 2 of them by Joe Nieuwendyk, basically like throwing some soft shots on Lalime from the blue line and going in. And really, they shouldn't have won that game. They were like really bad goals. Like Lalime just fell apart in game 7, but it still felt great for them to win that one. And
Lalime's
Patrick Lalime was just like that team. That Ottawa team was actually really good. They just had terrible goaltending.
The Marvin the Martian helmets.
Great helmet. Right. Great helmet. Yeah. The other memory is actually last year against the Blue Jackets in Game 4 when they had that epic comeback from 3 goals down in the third to take it to overtime and win it. And I already talked about that Bruins collapse, and that just always felt like something that only happened against the Leafs. So for that to actually happen for the Leafs, that they could actually make an epic comeback like that, I mean, it was amazing. And I was watching with my dad, and we were jumping up and down, high five, and we were so pumped. I remember texting Barron and Adam. I think it was like going into the third period or like halfway through the third period saying like, oh my God, like I hate hockey. Like, why do I watch this game? And then all of a sudden, 5 minutes later or whatever it was, 10 minutes later, I'm texting, I love hockey. Of course they lose the next game and it's all for naught, but I mean, it was still an awesome moment.
Why don't we do a podcast about something, with that affects our lives less? Like, let's talk about, I don't know, movies.
Flowers.
Yeah. What type of gardening are you guys putting in this year? Like, because I'll tell you, I spent a lot on gardening stuff this weekend.
So one last question before we end. There's been a lot of overtime games this playoffs. It seems like more than usual. Give us one. We'll just go with one. Give us one overtime goal that you always think of, like, oh, that was just the most epic thing. And I'll start us off with Baron, you said you hate going back to 06. I hate going back to 04, but it's kind of like the gold standard.
What else do we have?
Yeah,
what else do
exactly.
we have, right?
I think I have 2015 was the only other time I've watched them win a series. So it wasn't as epic, but 04 Flames game 7. Flames are up 2-1 with less than a minute to go. And Vancouver scores a goal, which is questionable. Someone threw a jersey on the ice and the ref didn't even stop play when Iginla was going for the empty net. Why the ref didn't call the whistle, I'll never know, but you could clearly see the jersey on the ice. The Canucks take the puck back. They score with 20 seconds to go in the third period. And me and my buddy and my family and my brothers were just dejected. We're like, this team is cursed. We're never going to win a playoff series. We had it 30 seconds to go. What the heck? This is awful. And then the Flames score with like a minute into overtime. Martin Jelena on the power play puts it past Ald, and I just went crazy. It was nuts. Just the fact that they, came back to win that after such a dejecting third period last minute goal. It was just the most epic thing ever, and it kind of propelled them on their playoff run. So for me, I would definitely go with that one. How about you, Baron?
I'm going to go back to 96, 97, Todd Marchand going for the overtime goal. The fact that just Curtis Joseph stood on his head, the fact that he was a goalie for the Oilers is probably one of the most forgotten, underrated things ever. But just the fact that Todd Marchand was able to make that goal and finally help elevate this team over the hump that was the flippin' Dallas Stars, which is a team that I disliked for a long time for that reason alone. That to me is my strongest overtime goal for sure.
Well, I remember back then, even not a lot, but there were some Calgarians cheering for the Oilers because at that time, Calgary was close to losing their team. Edmonton was close to losing their team. Canadian teams, small market teams kind of banded together. And if you look at the payroll of Dallas, they were 60 million or something stupid, and Edmonton's was 20 million.
Yeah,
right? There was such a disparity between the two that even some Calgary people were like, you know what? We kind of got to band together, and, I don't want to do it, but I'll cheer for Edmonton just because I don't want another big market U.S. team to win. And to see that goal, I mean, I watched that game when they had the COVID stoppage and they were showing classic games, and it was just a flashbulb of memories. I remember that, and I was I wasn't super happy, but I was yeah, good on them for winning. They beat the David, they beat Goliath. So then I think they play Colorado the next round, and I stopped cheering for them a little bit. But I didn't hate it. If that happened this year, I'd be I hate it. But back then I was yeah, get on the young guy, the young small team. How about you, Pilon?
I mean, for a game that I've actually watched, I would go again back to last year's overtime comeback against Columbus. So I'll go with a different one that I've only seen really in replays. I didn't watch it live, but I'll go back to 93, Dougie Gilmore, St. Louis, double overtime. It's the most replayed goal in Leafs history. Circling back and forth behind the net and finally putting that wrap around against Cujo. It was an awesome goal, an awesome moment in Leafs history.
Nice.
You guys watched decent games. I watched Ron Tugnut's 46 save game, which is also Guy Lafleur's last game in Boston, or last game ever, and just had them peppering the living crap out of Ron Tugnut as he just stood on his head, and he still allowed 4 goals.
Tugnut was a pretty solid goalie. I think he played for Ottawa for a bit too at the end there. So
just great name, Ronald Tugnut.
I always remember him in NHL 96. I was oh, that's an awesome name.
Oh, what a time.
Well, that was good. Hopefully, Baron, you talk some hockey. You got your malaise
out. It was cathartic.
I'm going to stick off of Twitter for the next...
It's probably a good idea.
2-3 weeks.
A good idea.
Probably.
We should all probably reach out to Adam, make sure he's all right.
Once they're done,
I apologize for all the Flames fans giving you flack. For the next little bit.
It's not even them. I had Canucks fans messaging me. I had everyone messaging me. As soon as that goal was scored, it was zzz, 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 zzz. Everyone's just waiting. Oh yeah, screw you, Cerrone. But whatever. It just sucks. But honestly, Yeah, it's going to be a lot harder for me to be a willing contributor to this podcast after next week.
But what do you think? I don't give a shit.
That's not even a lie. Like, I'm going to be like, who is Vegas? They had a team. I'll just be like so disconnected. It's unbelievable. So
I'm just going through the comments on like Adam's Willie weighs in. There's like so many Jets fans just beaking him. Oh, it's so great. So
his new one is probably him just slowly walking through the house with his hood up, like, "Hi guys."
Well, it started probably pretty good. He was probably like after the second period talking,
and he does it like period by period usually, right? So probably the first two he's all pumped and I told you guys, and then the third he's like, I don't know what happened. My TV broke. I didn't see it. Goodbye. That's it.
I'm not even sure like what the Oilers can do to break like the bad run here in the playoffs. But I mean, like 2016, 2017, they just need more second round.
They just need more. Well, they just
need better players.
More depth. Yeah, well, that's exactly it. They need, I mean, they have a lot of good young defensemen. I mean, once those defensemen start to mature, their defense will get better. You would hope. I mean, Darnell Nurse took a huge step this year.
A huge step in pay after next year too. So
is that when his contract's coming up?
One more year. Him and Puljujarvi have one more year cheap. Bear I think's got 2 more years. Caleb Jones has 1 year, but Caleb Jones isn't even playing right now.
Bear started off so strong at the start of the season, and then was he injured?
Yeah, he got concussed. He got sat down pretty early. Actually, he had a bad game, and they sat him down. I
thought he was okay today. I didn't,
No, Bear was fine. Yeah,
he was good. I thought Cassian had a strong game, actually, surprisingly. He's a player that, I don't really give out compliments too often to, but I thought he was very effective today.
He was good, too. It's just that when they collapsed, it was a team effort for everyone to collapse like that. So
yeah,
they look dejected, and for a team that's got to play again tomorrow, I don't know.
That's tough.
If he had a day off, maybe. But
does Koskinen play, or do they go back to Smith?
Well, Mike Smith maybe been bad in the sense that he's got like 1 or 2 bad goals this series, but the truth is honestly,
I just mean his age and the fact he has to play it back-to-back.
Overtime.
It's a short season. What are you gonna do? Like if you put in Koskinen, who has the weakest glove hand, like is what's his name playing tomorrow? Like
Hellebuck?
Yeah, it's not. No, the other guy, Brissois. Is Brissois gonna play? No, exactly. So you just go with the guy. You dance with the one who brought you brung. So brung you. I think Smith's fine. He's deserved it.
He had a fantastic year. He had a fantastic season.
He's going to get a big raise in Edmonton, right? Like he's not going back for less than $4 million next year.
For 6 years.
Here's the problem. He's a guy you can't really offer more than a 1-year contract. After last year, nobody wanted him.
No.
Edmonton took him because they
at his age too.
Didn't get anybody else. So yeah,
because we took Talbot, so they're like, okay, we'll take your goalie then.
Well, but like after that, even like there's not the demand there, and I think he likes playing for Tippett, and he's performance-based contract. He'll get paid, but unless they move Koskinen, they're not paying Mike Smith more than $2 million. So
yeah, it'd be interesting to see. I mean, I think he's earned more than $2 million. And
that Koskinen contract was just so bizarre by Chiarelli on his way out.
That's one of
the fact that they were done with him and they let him sign that contract and then just say no. That's their own fault.
So weird. Yeah.
Koskinen was good last year, but not this year. So
he wasn't that good last year.
His numbers were actually
decent.
They? Yeah,
I thought they were like
pretty good until the playoffs.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Yeah, that Chicago round really like the thing what collapsed the playoff. Like the goaltending was awful for everyone. Mike Smith was bad. Koskinen was bad. They're both bad. Yeah. So
yeah. Well, it's not bad, this podcast. So make sure you like, subscribe, hit comment, and thank you for listening to Baron's Confessions today. It was very therapeutic for everyone involved, and hopefully, leave a comment. What are your favorite memories from the first round, or what is your greatest tale of woe? Let us know, and thanks for listening.
I'll be cheering for the Jets if they win.
You bastard.
I will. That's the team I would cheer for probably the most in Canada, second anyway. So.